to not minding its business again and heading further on the warpath, with Iran vowing to respond to something which did not involve them. That's right, a ship off the coast of Oman was struck.
It was headed for the port of Fujairah in the United Arab Emirates, but the vessel was attacked on Thursday in the Arabian Sea off the Omani coast.
The ship was owned by an Israeli billionaire. One person killed on the tanker was from the United Kingdom, which has sparked backlash from the UK government. However, despite repeated calls for the UK government to respond, the Foreign Secretary of the UK, Dominic Raab, was hesitant to get involved, but luckily the Biden administration stood firmly beside its ally Israel and planned to retaliate, yes, for something which did not occur to it.
The United States will not just help investigate the attack, it has in fact vowed an appropriate response.
Now, Israel immediately blamed the attack on the ship, allegedly using suicide drones or a suicide drone on Iran. Now, given the proximity of Oman and the coastline there where the ship was hit to Iran and Yemen, it could have came from either direction, but Iran has denied its involvement in the incident and in fact insults Israel for jumping to such a conclusion so quickly.
Calling the accusations baseless, Iran not only denied launching the drone strike on the oil tanker, but also warned against any action over the incident.
But Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett was quick to come out and fire back at Iran and talk about how Israel would respond without an investigation having been conducted. Mind you, they're already talking about a retaliation.
Iran is the one that carried out the attack against the ship. Intelligence sources have uncovered evidence of this, and we expect the international community to make it clear to the Iranian regime that they have made a serious mistake. In any case, we know how to convey the message to Iran in our own way.
Now, it is really not possible at this point to determine whether this was actually carried out by Iran. But if it was carried out by Iran, then we have to look at the context behind this and also the attack in of itself. Now, first of all, as a tactic, this drone strike could have been used in order to make the insurance for shipping in the area go up astronomically. And that would affect not just Israel, but anyone wanting to utilize the Persian Gulf area. Also, if it was Iran, we have to put it in its proper context. According to the Wall Street Journal, the United States of America is apparently drafting new sanctions which are specifically designed to target Iran's drone and missile technology. Also, allegedly, the United States is going to go ahead with enforcing further its sanctions against Iran's oil industry, which is where a large portion of Iran's wealth comes from. And enforcing these sanctions will further drive down the living standards of the Iranian people. This is also at a time that the United States government is supposed to be fulfilling the campaign promise of Joe Biden working its way back into the JCPOA or Iran nuclear deal, because apparently they care so much about stopping Iran getting nuclear weapons, but the reality is the United States government itself is not actually that interested in the nuclear weapons. In fact, it is interested in what it is going after the most and trying to get Iran to bow down to when it comes to the Iran nuclear deal talks, and that is abandoning their regional alliances and putting a stop to their development of offensive and defensive weaponry. And these two things actually present a real threat to the United States and Israel in the region, whether they be the PMU inside of Iraq, the Syrian government and other armed groups inside of Syria, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the PFLP inside of the Gaza Strip, or Ansar Allah or the Houthis inside of Yemen. The allies of Iran in all of these countries are presenting a massive strategic threat to US hegemony. So if the United States is actually going to take offensive action against Iran, like it has been doing to the allies of Iran with the strikes in Iraq and Syria, which had no congressional approval, seems like the Biden administration has adopted the exact same policy of the man that he loves to criticize, to try and get Iran to bow down to new terms attached to the JCPOA or Iran nuclear deal. That meant its offensive and defensive weapons program and its regional alliances, and until that day would come, sanction Iran into the ground and pursue a regime change operation. And this is also because the United States, no matter what administration it is, cannot seem to grasp the concept that other countries want to pursue their own independent foreign policies. And the United States thinks that it's a rational solution to go in and bomb and starve anyone who does not bow down to them. In any case where they don't like anyone, the instant call to action is to sanction them and to bomb them. And since Iran is now pivoting towards the east and has signed a historic trade agreement with the Chinese government, the United States should be trying to get Iran back onto some sort of deal so that it can sort of create a counterbalance in the area to combat China's growing influence. But the fact that it's not doing this shows the irrational nature of the US government and the failed policy of pursuing regime change wars and making pretty much the entire world outside of the West hate you.
The Israeli government is hoping to derail the JCPOA, the reinstatement of the JCPOA in any form whatsoever.
It's either that massive mistake in terms of ideology which Joe Biden carries, or Joe Biden just genuinely forgot that he promised to get back into the Iran nuclear deal, and that makes a lot of sense because Joe Biden probably gets a fright half of the time when he wakes up and looks in the mirror and realizes he's not 20 years old.